for downloading this episode of Cork Talk with me, Tim Atkin. A weekly conversation with some of the most famous people in the world of wine. Michael Zaccagnini is a second-generation producer in Ribera del Duero, who trained under the legendary Mariano García, formerly of Vega Sicilia, as well as his late father, Javier. A lover of music and elegant expressions of Tempranillo, he's a person who questions everything in the vineyard and cellar, constantly striving to make better wines. His talent and dedication have made him one of the best young winemakers in Spain. Hello, Michael, and welcome to the podcast.
My pleasure.
You're at home, aren't you, in Valladolid, Spain? Lucky man?
Yes, I am.
And how's the wine looking this year, 2025 vintage? It seemed quite a tricky vintage, was it, in Ribera?
Yeah, a little bit. We've never faced so much mildew ever, so it's been a bit tricky. But overall, I think it's a very good vintage. I mean, not one of the super vintages, but I'm quite happy. Yeah.
Which was the last vintage you were really happy with? 21?
21 and 23. I'm really happy with 23, but we'll see about that.
Exactly. Listen, you speak amazing English because your mother is Irish. Your dad was a great linguist as well. But Zaccagnini, which is a very Italian surname, you've got French ancestors, a bit of Irish, as you just mentioned, a bit of Spanish, and you're bilingual, right? I mean, you're a bit of a mixture of cultures, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm Marco Pierre White of the winemaking without his talent, but in a different set.
And what do you feel? Do you feel Spanish? You spent most of your life in Spain, haven't you?
Yeah, I would say I do feel more Spanish than Irish, but I do like to have that part in me.
Yeah, have you spent a lot of time in Ireland?
When I was little more, we used to go every single summer because I got two cousins over there, so, joining the family. But now, with the job and my daughters, well, I don't have too much time to go over.
You haven't got time, yeah. I mean, interesting, the links in your past, I think it's the level of, was it your great-grandparents worked in the sherry industry and the cognac industry? So you're a bit of French and a little bit of Andalusian, right?
Yes, we do. There was these two companies of sherry and cognac, as you said, that had bonds in their industry. I think it was transport or export. And they decided to join the families. So they arranged this marriage with the man from the sherry and then the woman from the cognac. So that results in the joint families with the surname Sancho de Sopranis. And at this marriage, the result was my grandmother and father's side. That's why my father spoke French bilingual when he was a kid, because she was raised in France and she never lost the accent. So that was like where we got to sherry and cognac, but then we lost everything, or at least the family, due to Spanish Civil War, economic instability. So we never got to see those wineries.
Yeah, and I mean, your dad, Javier, once told me that his parents didn't drink wine. So your grandparents were not wine drinkers, right?
No, not at all. It's very odd that no wine at home, and then my father, with his career ending up directly in wine business. But yeah, no wine at the table. Yeah,
because how did he move into wine? Because he was not a winemaker, was he? He started out as a very successful industrial engineer and then moved into wine, in his late 20s?
Yeah, correct. He finished his engineering, then he did MBA, a master's, and then got to just running businesses. Then he managed to run two businesses at the same time, one German, due to he spoke many languages. But he was overloaded with work, and he was a very family guy. He really wanted to spend time with family, and this was just didn't make sense to him, working from Monday to Sunday every single day, all the hours. So he decided to take quit the jobs, quit both, and rethink what he was going to do. He took a whole year, a sabbatical year. And then my uncle started to get into wine world. He went to this, this classes. And he told my father, why don't you come over to this course? And my father said, okay, why not? And that's when the wine spark hit hard, because he saw, wow, wine can change so much from one region to another. I mean, my father thought that all the red wines in the world came from the same grape, red grape, and all the white wines in the world from the white grape. So he found out, that there's many, many possibilities and regions, and he really found that fascinating. So when he wanted to work again, he said, why don't I work in something I really enjoy? And I started to enjoy a lot of wine. So he joined this wine club, or the wine club at the time in Spain, that was Vino Selección.
And that was it. So, I mean, was wine part of your life growing up?
Well, to a certain degree. I mean, not when I was a kid, but I've always had this very profound bond with food. I've always liked flavors. My father, my parents always told me that they would take me to Michelin star restaurants even when I was 4, because I was, just give me a fork and I'll go through all the plates. So, taste really had something clicking with me. So seeing my father, with the Consejo Regulador when he started in 1992, Alto project. So I was, involved, or at least, emotionally in the upbringing of wine, meeting Mariano, having, seen work. And that was really when one of the days, I'm not sure when, I was tasting one of the Altos and I said, okay, wow, I like wine. This is good. And that's,
Yeah, because your dad set up Alto with Mariano García. Mariano García was the legendary winemaker at Vega Sicilia. He was even born at Vega Sicilia, I think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did you visit vineyards and the bodegas, once you got into your teens with your dad? I mean, Alto was up and running by then, wasn't it? Because your dad worked for the Consejo Regulador, the regulatory council in Ribera del Duero for a while. He ran it, didn't he?
Yeah, I know. In fact, he would take us now and then to the Consejo Regulador in Roa. I remember playing, in the offices and, making tents with my father's desk in the Consejo Regulador before they, built the new building. And then with Alto, the same. I saw the beginning of Alto with the first winery. A lot of people don't know where the first winery of Alto is, and it's very near our winery. And, I've seen the construction of the new building of Alto, being in the vineyard. So I've been very, bonded to the winery since little.
Because, I mean, your dad died very sadly in 2023, far too young, and he was somebody I liked very much. And he was very entrepreneurial, and he was a pioneer. We've talked about Alto and also Se Solo, which we're going to talk about in a minute, which is your family project. I think he set it up in 2007. Before that, 2005, he'd done this amazing wine in Rueda called Ocean, this old vine Verdejo. I mean, did he ever have any formal training as a winemaker, or did he just do that wine tasting course and that was it?
No. He only did that wine tasting course. He never studied wine, but if when you met him, he's a very bright person and really wanted to learn. So he's all the time asking questions to Mariano. Mariano, why do we do this? Why do you do that? Started to read a bit. So he got a lot of knowledge of winemaking, and especially hands-on the job. Because he liked to participate in the harvest in Alto. So he would be in the sorting table. He'd be with the pumping overs. He liked to work also as someone, one more person in the winery, not necessarily the director. So that was basically his training, working side by side with Mariano. So that's a really good course.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it? Yeah.
No.
And what did you learn from your dad? I mean...
Well, many things. I mean, I think we'd have to use another 2 podcasts for that. But I think the main thing that I learned was the attitude and the way he works. He really wanted to go for excellency, and he would push every single person that he would work with to the limit. I mean, Mariano, if you can do better, let's do better. In the white winery, if you can do better, why don't we do better? It's always the question, what are we doing wrong or what can we do better? And really fight for, excellency in everything he was doing. And then a big, business mind saying, okay, does this work? This is not communication, how to communicate with people to, really bring you whatever you're working at your winery with passion to the consumer, the public.
He was a people person as well, wasn't he? Your dad. He was, he was always fun to be around, really. I mean, you studied enology at the Universidad Politécnica in Madrid. At what point did you decide you wanted to be a winemaker? Did you ever consider doing anything else?
Yes. I mean, when I was young, I wanted to be an inventor. So I wanted to do engineering. But, I mean, I wasn't a very good student. And I saw that, look, I'm not a really bright person, so I don't think I'll be inventing much things or working in big projects as an engineer. So I guess I'll just be fixing, washing machines. And I said, no, that's not going to be the life for me. But then once you meet Mariano and see how he has this involvement with wine, his, basically his craft, seeing Mariano at the restaurants, how he was admired with his work. You taste his wine and say, okay, I want to do what that guy does.
That was the inspiration, right?
Yeah, definitely. So the inspiration was Mariano.
Well, that's not a bad person to be inspired by, I would say. And he's still very much alive, isn't he? And what an amazing, I mean, I've been lucky enough to meet him on a few occasions, and I can see why he inspired you. So you did very well in your degree. You know, you did amazingly well. And then you graduated and you went to work, I think, in Burgundy and Bordeaux, as well as in New Zealand. Did you do harvests in all three places? How did that work?
Yeah, I managed to do the two harvests very quick in Burgundy and Bordeaux, because there was a early vintage in Burgundy and then a late vintage in Bordeaux. So I managed to, get those two done. And then I went over to New Zealand, to at least get one more harvest in the year. And that was basically my only stashes in different wineries.
And you worked at Villa Maria in New Zealand, didn't you?
Yeah, very big winery.
So was that George Fistonich? Was he there in those days?
I got to see him one day. I think they have two wineries, one also, I think, in Hawke's Bay. Yeah. So I think he did come down one day. I think it was like the party after harvest, and one of the dinners or something like that. He was there, but I didn't really get to talk too much to him.
Yeah, I mean, back in Spain, you worked. Did you work at Alto to start with before you went to Say Solo?
No, I worked in Say Solo officially. I did, do work at inside Alto, and the story is quite funny. I tried to be quick about it, because when I was coming back from New Zealand, my father told me this because I didn't know what was going on. I was just going to come back and look for another job, another winery, see where I could end up. And Mariano called up my father and he said, "What is your son going to do when he comes back to Spain?" And my father said, well, he's going to look for a job and not get it. So Mariano said, "I want you to hire him at Alto because I want to train him as a winemaker, as I did with my sons." And my father surprisingly said no, because my father was, he said no, because my father was a very, responsible director and part owner of Alto. And he said, "Look, Mariano, there's absolutely no excuse to hire my son, because Alto is something special." At the time, they had three winemakers. They had Mariano as the chief, and they had Jose Carlos Antonio. They had someone in the lab, and said, "Look, Mariano, there's no reason to hire, the son of the boss just so he can work here. And also pay him, because we can't let him work here without a contract if anything happens." So Mariano just backed up and he said, "Well, it's your decision. It's your, you hire whomever you want." And then 5 minutes after, Mariano calls again and says, "But Javier, what about Say Solo? Say Solo is 100% yours. And and at the time you were making Say Solo inside Alto. So if you hire your son at Say Solo, there's no excuse, because you always need help. We don't have to, the partners have nothing to do with that. And then he'll be physically inside Alto, so then I can train him as a winemaker."
Oh, what did he say? Okay.
Yeah, then my father was, yeah, okay.
So you worked at Alto, but you worked on Say Solo, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, your dad set it up in 2007, but he wasn't happy with the wine until what, 2011? Was it the first release?
Yeah, he was a stubborn guy. He had in mind what kind of wine he wanted to do. Obviously, people must understand that in 2007, Ribera del Duero was still super powerful, concentrated wines, 15% alcohol, that would be like a minimum. So he wanted to go into a bit more finesse kind of style. But as he wasn't a trained winemaker, I mean, he knew a lot about winemaking, but not trained winemaker. So he was a lot of trials. So he started in 2007, did 7, 8, 9, 10, wasn't happy with the results. And then 2011 was, okay, this is the way I want to make wine. Yeah.
What's the origin of the name? Because the label is beautiful, isn't it? I really like the writing on the front of it.
Oh, thank you. Once again, my father, with his brilliancy, he was a super fan of Bach, maybe the best fan of Bach ever. And Bach composed 6 pieces for violin, very famous. And he saw in one of the CDs, when he was listening to the pieces, the photograph of the manuscript. And the manuscript said, "Sei solo a violino senza basso accompagnato." And my father said, "Wow, this is fantastic, because look, Sei Solo is the name of the music piece." And he thought that was, absolutely brilliant that Bach had actually named the winery and then designed the label, because the label Say Solo, that writing is his handwriting.
That's Sebastian Bach's handwriting.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And he said he named the winery and did the label. And we don't have to pay anything for the design. So
I love that. I mean, your dad was a music lover, but he was a musician because you're a musician. You know, I like one of the things I like tasting with you is you're surrounded by your pianos in there, and you've got lots of guitars on the wall. It feels like a musical place. You love music, don't you?
yeah, I do. I play the piano. I started playing when I was 12, so very late to start playing any instrument. Then I did start a bit with the guitar, you know, in high school, tried to, you know, impress the girls. Didn't work. And my father did also have, you know, as he was super fan of Bach, he always was in love with music since he was a kid. He played a bit the guitar when he was young. He studied many years a classical flute. And then did start studying piano with me, then dropped out a few years after because, you know, piano requires a lot of time. But yeah, music has been, you know, a very important part of my father and myself.
Tell us a bit about the vineyards, because I think they're all in Burgos, aren't they? Which is the biggest sub-region of the four, really, in Ribera del Duero.
They're mainly in Burgos, but I got two secret vineyards, one in Pesquera and one in Quintanilla de Arriba. Yeah, that I planted with my father. So yeah, we have one red rogue one in Pesquera, but yeah, mainly all the vineyards are in La Horra and very, very near, basically in the limit, you know, the political line of La Horra or the next town. For example, I got two vineyards that are in the same slope, just in different sides, and one is La Horra and one is not. But I mean, basically, it's the same soil.
You've got one in Gumiel de Mercado as well.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. That's the one that you know has the mirror image of the soil from the other side. It's very nice.
And, I mean, are they all owned by you, or do you buy grapes as well?
No, I wish, but no. Mainly, most of the old vineyards are mine. I would say 2/3 of the old vineyards are mine. Where my father's then passed down. And then the rest are, we rent them. We control the viticulture, but we rent them for, you know, 10 years and 10 years. So we've been working with with basically two families for many, many years.
Yeah. I mean, La Horra is very famous. I mean, partly because of Pingos, I suppose, isn't it? I mean, yeah. Is it the best village, do you think? In Burgos?
No, I don't think. I don't believe in all these things of best village, or, you know, or the golden triangle, or the golden mile, and all these things. I think every village has something special to offer, and it would be like, I don't know, who's the best painter or who's the best composer. I mean, sometimes it just comes down to taste. And I would say, in Ribera del Duero, you get something like that. Is La Aguilera better than La Horra? No, it's just different. It has different soil, different character. So La Horra has been something very important for us because we like a lot the character of the grapes there. My father, you know, fell absolutely in love with La Horra, so it has something special of the character for us. But I wouldn't say it's better or worse than any other.
Yeah. I mean, how does Burgos, that sub-region, differ from the other three being Valladolid, Soria and Segovia? You said you've got some vineyards in Pesquera, for example, and Quintanilla de Arriba, yeah? How does Burgos differ? Because it's usually considered the home of most of the best sites in the region, isn't it?
Well, I would say because it's the eldest that's, you know, started with the majority of the wineries. I would say there's like two main differences in the character of the wines. I would say they're a bit more bold, a bit more compact wines with a little bit more like clay character in Burgos than maybe the others. And also maybe the geographics, you know, or the soil, because if you go from Quintanilla de Onésimo down to basically Peñafiel, it's very easy to understand the land. I mean, not the soils, don't get me wrong, but you have the flat part, the Vega, then you have the slopes, and then you can actually see from the road the Páramo.
But well, the Páramo is where you see the limestone, really, which is the flat moorland, really, above.
So it's very easy to see like that valley, the flat, the slopes, and then the top. But once you go over Peñafiel and then you start going into, you know, Burgos, that all breaks down, and it's very difficult to have, if it's north exposure, south exposure. We have different soils. You can see it completely, you know, broken down the structure of the soils. So I would say it's different, not better or worse, but completely different.
Yeah. I mean, your wines are pretty terroir focused, especially say Solo, which is that all from older vines in La Horra? I think it is, isn't it?
Yes, it's all old vines. Sometimes we have one of or two of the vines that are, you know, vineyards that are right, you know, beside La Horra. But I would say both of our wines, the main character would be La Horra.
Yeah, because Alto is famously blended across sub-regions, isn't it, in Ribera del Duero? I just wonder what the advantages and disadvantages of making vineyard-focused wines a single vineyard as opposed to blending, especially in a region like Ribera del Duero, which, it's not an easy place to grow grapes, is it?
Well, I think it's easier maybe than other regions. I would not want to face the problems of Rías Baixas or Burgundy.
That's true.
But I mean, here, except for some years, it's quite more or less kind, But I would say the main difference is if you center more in a single town, especially in old vineyards, as they have their own clone, the clone of the town. These old vineyards, they keep, they graft them from the other ones beside, the neighbors. So each village has their own clone of Tempranillo and also their own soils. So I would say you have a very more specific kind of character of the wines, more defined. It's very difficult maybe to move out of that personality of the wine. And then if you use different villages, then you can, blend these personalities and then have a good average Ribera del Duero kind of wine. So you get a really good taste of the whole region instead of something very specific. And also it has its advantages that if you have one town that has frost or has hailstone, then you can level that out. But if we have hailstone or frost in Laura, well, then I have a big swear word of problems.
Yeah, because it's wiped you out. I mean, it's interesting. You're talking about these massal selections, these old vineyards. Really, I mean, people sometimes talk about Tempranillo as being the clonal stuff that arrived in the 90s, really, from Rioja and Italy and places like that. Whereas they call Tinto Fino or Tinta del País the old stuff, really, the old massal selections. Is that something that you've noticed?
Yes, and I discovered that, obviously from being in the region, but especially due to the fact of how Alto operates, because as Alto gets, the grapes, and especially at the beginning from very old vineyards in different towns, and they normally kept everything per separate. So you had, wine from Fresnillo, from Baños, from Laura, from La Aguilera, from Quintanilla. You had all this separate, and you could taste the character year after year of that town. Now, that's why my father fell in love with Laura, because every time he was tasting Laura, he said, wow, I just love this one. I just love this one.
I've got to buy a vineyard there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how do you farm your vineyards? I mean, as you said, you've got your own vineyards, but also you're working with growers, but you're in the vineyards that belong to the growers as well, aren't you? You're telling them how to farm.
Well, I guess you hear this a lot, that we work organically and then we don't certify it and all those things. We do work mainly organically, especially in the old vineyards. But I did use some conventional in this vintage due to the mildew. I wish someday I have, the growth in the winery to be able to take it to the vineyard, to the next level. I would love to work organically, but, as it has loads of work costs that I hope someday I'll be able to overcome. But right now we try to work as much as we can in organic. But if we have a big problem, then I just can't afford, to be treating every 3 days. I just don't have that power right now.
I mean, it's interesting that there's a very high percentage of organic vineyards in Ribera del Duero, isn't it? Why is it so well suited to organics? Obviously not in a year when there's lots of mildew, but is it just the lack of rainfall?
I would say yes, because the main problem that we have in Ribera del Duero, year after year, would be oidium. And basically you can go through that with just sulfur. So it's easy to be organic in Ribera del Duero. I mean, it's never easy to be organic anywhere, but it is easier if you just have to rely on a bit of sulfur and maybe a tiny bit of copper. I mean, this year, 25 was absolutely odd from previous years. But if you go to Rías Baixas, I mean, that could be a nightmare trying to work with organic, because they have many, many problems with humidity.
It amazes me, because I've just finished a Rías Baixas report. There are 4 organic producers. I mean, 3 are in the DO and 1 is just outside Conde de Tea. But I mean, some of the people are losing, 50% of their crop every year to botrytis and mildew. I mean, you've got to be pretty committed to do that, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. So in Ribera del Duero, I think it's easier in that aspect. So a lot of people have been working many, many years in organic, just that they didn't certify. And now, we have problems in, wine world with the sales and all this. So I do think that it's also a strategy to for the consumer to see, that there's many wineries with organic or biodynamics, or even I've seen vegan. That always makes me smile.
That doesn't mean much, does it? Let's face it. I just wonder how climate change is affecting Ribera del Duero. I mean, 2022 was really hot. I mean, this is a region that used to pick sometimes in November, certainly well into October. The harvests are getting earlier, aren't they?
Yes, but I'm going to be very careful with what I say, because it's not that I'm a climate, change denier or anything. But climate change, it comes with extremes, and I think it's too soon to really evaluate where we are. That we did have, vintages that were very hot, but as the theory of climate change is that can go to extremes. Maybe we have the next 4 years of super cold, everybody harvesting in October, and then I'm sure people will say, no, there's no climate change. Well, this is part of climate change, maybe the extremes. So I think you have to have a bit of more flexibility and being able to improvise, because you don't know what's going to come. But yeah, we've seen these very early vintages in a row, but I'm not sure if we're going to be seeing this in the next 5. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, how did you deal with 2022? Because, it was demanding, wasn't it? I mean, did you make the wines in a different way? Because you're a very thoughtful winemaker.
Thank you. It was a bit of a nightmare because I would be taking samples every 3 days of every single vineyard. So I was very, early to detect this water stress. I mean, we had a lot of heat. We did have rain, but we didn't know the reserves. So as soon as I saw vineyards having, water stress, I would harvest. So I was very, picky with this one, the other we'll wait and try even sometimes to balance out. If I have a vineyard that I know that normally has a lot of water and can handle this, maybe harvest later than what I wanted to balance out maybe those lack of tannins development in other vineyards. So it was a more think of what you have and then where you want to go. It's not as, well, we're going to harvest every vineyard when it's perfect. Well, we won't get that year. So careful decisions. And then winemaking regards, yes, tanks that have a bit of more tougher tannins, maybe less pumping over. We wouldn't leave it on the skins too much. And then others, I would go overdrive. We do have good tannins, very rich, very juicy tannins, maybe a bit of too high alcohol. So no worry. Let's over extract this one, because then when we're going to blend and construct the final wine, this is going to work.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, tell me a little bit about old vines, because I know that you're very, very keen on old vines, particularly for, say, Solo, your top wine. I think some of the grapes that go into Preludio, which is your entry point wine, if you could call it that, are only 3 years old. But do you have to farm old vines in a different way? And also when the fruit comes into the winery, do you treat it differently?
No, in the sense that I treat every, lot different from each other. So even if it's a young vineyard, it would have a different treatment. So I don't have a protocol. This is Solo. This is Preludio. I do after fermenting. The malolactic partly would be in tank or oak in Preludio, and 100% in Solo. But for me, the thing is the character that you get from the old vineyards. It's they tend to have a bit more complexity. They're not so flashy in the fruits. I think they have a lot of more depth. More development of the tannins, so you normally get softer tannins and rounder with the old vineyards.
That's interesting.
So I mean, you just see it that the younger vineyards have less concentration, more juicy and freshy, and a bit more acidity in the young vineyards. But the old ones, the problem is that there's not much you can do. I mean, they're very stubborn and they'll do whatever they want. So you can't really manage the yields in the old vineyards, because you can try to prune to have more yields, and they'll just give you the same that they would have done if you did less. So they just balance out themselves. So you just have to really take care of whatever they set when they burst, and try to take care a lot of that to harvest. And then in the younger vineyards, they're more flexible. You can, leave a bit more of clusters and then make decisions if you want to adjust.
I like the idea of old vines being stubborn. They're like old people then. Just tell us a little bit how Preludio and Solo differ. I mean, are they always from different vineyards? And just what you're trying to achieve with each of those two wines?
Well, And Say Solo would be with the philosophy or the beginning philosophy of the winery. We're trying to go for elegance, balance, not the wow factor that maybe you can get some with other wines in Ribera del Duero. This, a lot of concentration, color, and character. We're trying to go for a more finesse, balance, elegance, a more detail to the tannins. Maybe less presence of the oak. We don't want the oak to really overwhelm Tempranillo, that you can get that very quickly. And for Preludio, I'm looking to keep the character of those young vineyards and try to show it in what we do with the scope of Ribera del Duero. I mean, I want to maintain freshness, fruitiness, acidity, that you can get a lot of this with the young vineyards, and complement maybe the lack of those developed tannins with a bit more oak. So it's a bit like odds that being a winery from Ribera del Duero, our entry-level wine has more oak than the top
exactly.
wine.
Yeah.
So it's like a summary of how we see Ribera del Duero with the lens of Say Solo, with Preludio, and then Say Solo is whatever we want to do. Okay,
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you only work with one grape, don't you? I mean, your dad thinking that all wines were made from one grape, red wines. It's Tempranillo you work with, or Tinto Fino, Tinto del País. Why is Tempranillo so well suited to Ribera? What do you like about it as a grape?
Well, I think it has like this overall quality that everything goes perfect and nothing is superb. I mean, it has loads of color, but maybe it's not the most deep color grape in the world. It has a bit of aroma. It's not the most aromatic. Has a lot of tannins, but it's not, completely overwhelming. So it's a very balanced wine. Grape for the region. The main problem that you get with other kind of grapes is that they have off balance in one of the aspects. It could be acidity, it could be alcohol. Like for example, Garnacha has a beautiful acidity. The acidities of Garnacha are just, superb. But then you go with Garnacha with 15.5 of alcohol, and you're like, oh wow, it's just off balance what we want to achieve.
So Tempranillo has a bit of everything, basically, what you're saying. Yeah. Is there anything about it you don't like?
Yeah, I would say many things. That's why I work so hard to fix them.
Go on. So what don't you like about it?
I don't like its potassium content that high. Destroys the acidity. It's just too high. It's just incredibly high. So I really like my wines to show acidity, and it is a struggle. So I don't really like that part about Tempranillo, because it's not that it lacks acidity. It just has too much potassium that will destroy that acid. I don't like, due to these vintages, the alcohol level, but it also would have a big dependence in the region and vintage. And maybe the aromatics. I would love that Tempranillo would be a bit more aromatic. It's very difficult to get fresh fruit in Tempranillo without getting green tannins, because as soon as you stop having green tannins, it's very difficult to maintain, that red fruit, crisp. You just go into a more mellow kind of fruit with Tempranillo. So sometimes, I don't know, maybe Tempranillo is not too happy with me.
I don't know about that. I think it probably is. It probably thinks you're doing a good job. I mean, there are other people in the region blend Tempranillo with other things, with Cabernet and Merlot and Malbec, which are all permitted, and Garnacha, but and other things too, Bobal, Valenciana as it's called, and white grapes. Are you ever tempted to add something else in? I mean, a lot of these old vineyards have those grapes, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I do have, I think I counted like 9 different varieties in our vineyards. I think we have Tempranillo, white Tempranillo, Tempranillo gris, I've got Garnacha, Garnacha Tintorera, Garnacha Blanca, Albillo, Moscatel, Bobal. So that would all get blended into...
it goes in anyway, right? Okay.
Yeah, we'll go in. But it's a very, very, very low percentage. So I wouldn't say I'm blending or using the character of any of those for the final wine. Yeah. I would like to work with Garnacha. I would love to work with Garnacha that wouldn't go with too much of a high alcohol to balance out the acidity. And I like the character of a good Garnacha, but I'm not too much interested with the other grapes. I wouldn't go for Merlot or Cabernet, with all the respect. I like to work with the Tempranillo and maybe more Spanish grapes than from French varieties. And the white wines, well, Albillo has always gone into Say Solo, as maybe Vega Sicilia has been writing it down 5% many years as something that we've always been doing.
So when you declare 100% Tempranillo, it's not 100% Tempranillo anyway, is it?
No, but maybe just 1% or less is a different grape. But
it still has an influence, though, doesn't it? It still has an influence.
Yeah, I mean, it sure does. I mean, when you do blends in wines, even a 1% can change a bit the personality of the wine. But I don't think I'm very focused in saying, okay, we're going to work with Garnacha. Let's find more Garnacha or plant Garnacha or plant and cultivate Albillo Mayor in a different way to get something. I'm not paying too much.
I mean, would you ever make a white wine? I mean, you know, Albillo Mayor has been permitted by the DO since 2018, I think, or a clarete. You know, the clarete is these blends of red and white grapes, which are to make rosés, were the historic style in Ribera, weren't they? Until what, the 70s?
Yeah, I've never been very interested in rosé wines, so I don't think I'll be making anytime soon any clarete. I enjoy drinking them from other people. I like the rosé from Sastre and the Territorio Luthier or Le Rosé. I like what other people do, but I wouldn't attempt to do it myself because I just don't feel myself there, and it's not wines that I'm really too interested in the long run. And regarding white wine, I am making a white wine.
Aha!
but it's still a secret because it's not Albillo Mayor.
What is it?
That's the main secret. You'll have to find out. Maybe next year you'll find out.
I'm looking forward to that. So it's going to be a new Say Solo white.
Yes, and it has I think a very nice story because it's a vineyard that I planted with my father in Quintanilla de Arriba. Sadly enough, he didn't get to see the first vintage because we were going to harvest and then, we didn't have yield and then frost. And the thing is that I'm replicating to some extent, I mean, its own personality, but the way my father thought, because I don't consider myself a white wine, winemaker. I know a bit about reds, but not in the level I wish to have with whites. So I said, what did my father do? I'm going to look for help. So I've hired the same Burgundy consultant that my father hired in 2005 for Ocean. So it's the same winemaker 20 years after.
What a lovely idea. Yeah. I think that's fantastic. So it's a bit of a tribute to your dad in a way, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, he's a fantastic winemaker. It's just absolutely incredible. He's going to be
Who's the consultant?
He's called Pierre Milman.
Fantastic. Pierre Milman. Well, I'm looking forward to tasting that. Listen, one thing we didn't talk about, and this is very interesting, is the way you work with different types of oak, because you're doing these super interesting trials, aren't you? Just tell us about what you're working on exactly with your oak barrels.
The way I think there's one thing to take into consideration. I think there's like two philosophies regarding oak in a winery. The one would be that you don't want the character of the cooper to influence your wine. So the strategy is to use many, many coopers to blend out those personalities. And then that would be, for example, Tomás Postigo. I mean, I think they work with 23 different coopers.
They're all very oaky though, aren't they?
Yeah, but I mean, but it's his style. I mean, it's Tomás Postigo. Yeah. And then there would be like a different kind of philosophy. There would be understanding that each cooper has its own personality and its own like flavor, character, and think if that works or not with your wine. Like if it was spices, you can have black pepper, green pepper, white pepper. They all taste like pepper, but it's not exactly the same depending on the dish that you're going to work with. So for me, it would be that I'm going to take the personality of the cooper, search for the cooper that it has the personality that works with my wine, and then try to exploit it to the next level with the different kind of toast of the oak, seasoning of the oak. For me is very important to level out what kind of tannins you want to add. So normal, you would have 24-month seasoning of the oak. We work with 100% 36, and and give you to taste these experiments of 48. So in exploring in the personality of those coopers, where we can push it to the next level that would work with our wines.
Yeah, very interesting. And you're doing things like different toast levels on the heads, that's the end of the barrels, and on the staves, right? I mean, you're taking it to another level of detail, really.
I hope so, and I think the next time you'll come over, I'll give you this super trial that I have now. That is barrels that are toasted with volcanic rocks, and but the twist is that it's the 4 same barrels with the same toast, with the volcanic rocks, but 24-month seasoning, 36, 48, and 60 months seasoning.
Fantastic. Well, that's two things we've got to taste. So we're going to do that trial, and we've also got to do the white, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Yes,
Listen, final question is, how do you get away from wine? I presume it's music, is it?
I do try. I would love to have more time to play the piano, but I have a family to take care.
You've got two small kids, haven't you?
Yes, I do. Two girls.
Who've been very quiet, I have to say. We have to thank them for being so quiet.
Yeah, one has been, shouting that she wanted to be with Papa, but Papa is working right now. I would say family and especially music. I would say music would be the main thing as like hobby, if we could put it to a way that completely has nothing to do with food. Or say, how do you get a wine? I go to a restaurant. I mean, you're talking about food, but in this case, music would be what really has another very important part of me.
Fantastic. I mean, I think your dad would be proud of that, but also he'd be really proud of the wines that you're making at the moment, because they're brilliant. So
thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast. It's been brilliant talking to you. I've learned so much as ever, and I look forward to seeing you soon for those tastings.
Sure. We'll be waiting. My pleasure.
I really like Michael's take on old vines and the way he works with oak as a seasoning rather than the dominant flavour in his reds. Say Solo is a remarkable project. Next week on Cork Talk, my guest is Robin Copestick of Freshnet Copestick in the UK. Join me then. Thanks for listening to Cork Talk. If you want to read more reports, articles and tasting notes by me, go to my website, timatkin.com. You can also follow me on Twitter @timatkin and on Instagram @timatkinmw. See you next week.